Good evening. You're watching Wion. World is One, and we have breaking news coming to you from the United Nations Security Council. Strong backing from China for Pakistan, but the plea at the UNSC has been thwarted. Sources tell Wion that at least 4 nations at the Security Council have backed India. Russia and France have stalled Pakistan's move. They've called for a bilateral engagement on Kashmir, which is India's stated position as well. And then came India's permanent representative at the United Nations, Syed Akbaruddin, the man you see on your screen. He said that any country can throw any matter to the UNSC, but people have seen the outcome. He also said that Article 370 is India's internal matter with no external implications. In response to a question by Pakistani journalists, by the way, he first fielded questions by Pakistani journalists before coming to the Indian ones to avoid any charges of bias. He said, Mr. Akbaruddin said, that India's stand is very clear. India is committed to the 1972 Shimla Accord, and it is up to Pakistan to stop supporting terror to start talks with India. Quite an interesting interaction there at the United Nations Security Council. And with us is Vivek Kaju, former Indian diplomat and someone who has handled. Thank you very much for your patience. We started with a response on China's statement, but then we saw India's representative come and make some very interesting and very strong points here. And most importantly, he said that 2 states who made national statements tried to pass them off as the will of the international community, which is why he felt the need to clarify. India has put its
people have been saying all through. So this is actually wrong practice, and I'm sure that in the UN Security Council diplomatic circles this would not be appreciated. What Akbaruddin did was just right and proper. He put forward India's position strongly. Now he also clarified that things in the Kashmir Valley are returning to normal, and that from Monday schools and offices will open fully, and that's all to the good. So all in all, I think Akbar did very well, and I also think that in the UN Security Council informal consultations, as details will get known, it will be found that India's position that what has happened is really concerning the domestic jurisdiction of India would have found resonance. Actually, what will now determine the future will be what happens in the Kashmir Valley, and it seems that things are under control and will be returning to normal. That should be the object of the government, and that is what all of us in India, I'm sure, and people in the Kashmir Valley are looking forward to.
Absolutely. And the irony of ironies, Mr. Kaju, that it was China, a country like China, that came on an international stage and said something about human rights violations and their concerns about it. Be that as it may, would it be fair to say that Pakistan has exhausted all its options? They spoke about going to the UNSC. The Polish chair has said that this is a bilateral matter. They went to the Organization of Islamic Countries. They got no support there. They went to the Russians. They got no support. They went to the Americans, got no support. Went to this UNSC closed-door meeting, and it seems that things haven't changed for Pakistan, have they?
No, I don't think they have changed. The Chinese came in for the Pakistanis because of the Chinese-Pakistani nexus, and that is something that we will have to watch out for, notwithstanding all this big talk of the Wuhan spirit, because the Chinese-Pakistani nexus is directed towards us. At this time, the least the Chinese could have done for Pakistan was to ask the UNSC president to hold informal consultations, and that is what they've done. At the informal consultations, the wind has blown totally against the Pakistani quest for trying to see that there's greater. End of the day, if any kind of move takes place on J&K, and if there's restlessness in the international community, it will only be through the question of human rights, and that is something that India has lives have been lost. So if things return to normal in the Kashmir Valley soon, then I think we don't have any concern. We should have any concerns. But that should be our focus. Our
Right.
focus has to be internal. The people of Kashmir are our people, and we want them to return to their normal lives as soon as possible. I think that is the desire of all fellow Indians, and
Right.
also that our people in Kashmir are able to live their lives in honor and dignity and maintain their traditions along with the
Already underway some restrictions, and a lot of them have been eased today. The process has begun. My colleague Siddhant Sibal has been tracking this story very closely for us. He's the one who spoke to the Russian representative and was told that Russia supports, and very rightly, the line that this is a bilateral matter between India and Pakistan, and Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir per se, is India's internal matter. Siddhant, would it be fair to say that Pakistan
Big day for India. India has been able to prove to the world that it's a power here to stay. And of course, we have been talking to people, and one thing we have learned that it was because of India's friends in Moscow, in Washington, and in Paris, because of which India was able to get this major victory. And of course, Pakistan, which has been claiming that it will go to UNSC when it comes to raking up Kashmir, has a difficult moment. As of now, we know that the Pakistani foreign minister is right now speaking in Islamabad.
Very quickly, I want to ask you, Siddhant, do we have a handle on who spoke in favor of India and who against? You said friends in Washington, Paris, and Moscow helped India. So I'm assuming that these are the three countries that said that this is a matter best left to India and Pakistan, and the UN should not meddle in it.
Well, as of now, the figures are not known that how many countries backed India, but it looks like a massive number. When the numbers will, of course, we'll get to know the numbers out of the 15 members. But one thing is for sure, two countries were against India. In that room, that one country, Islamabad, was not inside the room, but it's all whether partner, friend was there, Beijing was there, at whose behest this meeting happened. But clearly a message has been sent to Beijing and Islamabad together tonight here in New Delhi, and of course it's morning there in New York, that when it comes to New Delhi will be taking all the action when it comes to its national interest. And of course the message has been already sent to Islamabad, but it seems that Islamabad is not keen to change its ways when it comes to the issue of terrorism or engaging with India or Afghanistan, where it has been spreading terrorism.
Right, Siddhant, stay with us. We are going to revisit that statement. First of all, let's start with what Syed Akbaruddin said. He was the third speaker to address the press, the only speaker who took questions from the press. He spoke because he wanted to clarify on the statements made by the previous speakers, the representatives from Pakistan and China, who presented a one-sided position and tried to sell it as the will of the international community. Listen in to how Mr. Syed Akbaruddin, India's permanent representative at the UN, debunked those statements.
Since the changes internal to India have not made any difference to our external orientation, India remains committed to ensure that the situation there remains calm and peaceful. We are committed to all the agreements that we have signed on this issue. We note that there were some who tried to project an alarmist approach to the situation, which is far from the ground realities. Of particular concern is that one state is using terminology of jihad against and promoting violence in India, including by their leaders. Friends, violence is no solution to the problems that all of us face. we are committed to and inconsistent with our previous position that all issues between India and Pakistan, as well as India and any other country, will be resolved bilaterally, peacefully, and in a manner that behoves normal interstate relations between countries. We are saddened that terrorism is being fueled, language and incendiary talk of jihad is being mentioned by people who should know better. All of you are understanding of the situation here. I do not need to tell you what was the outcome of the closed consultations.
There was an effort to stop this meeting from convening, and we are grateful to all 15 members of the UN Security Council for agreeing to having this meeting. This meeting has reaffirmed the validity of UN Security Council resolutions on the state. I think today this meeting nullifies India's claim that Jammu and Kashmir is an internal matter.
I don't know on what basis she's saying it. Of course, I'm sure you figured out this is Pakistan's representative to the United Nations, Maliha Lodi, saying that there was an effort to prevent this meeting from happening. It took place nonetheless. And whatever she goes on to say after that, Anas Malik, my colleague, is through with us from Islamabad. Anas, how is it that the Pakistani representative is even trying to spin it as a win for Pakistan? Nothing has changed, and it seems the United Nations Security Council has decided that this is a matter best left to India, and if needed, between India and Pakistan.
Well, Palki, the Pakistani side was adamant since yesterday. They were claiming it as victory, just as it was confirmed that the United Nations Security Council's consultation would be held on under the India-Pakistan question. The fact that the Pakistani side is portraying, a while ago, the Pakistani Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, he was speaking to the media as well, and he was claiming victory under the pretext that because a session took place at all, the fact that the permanent 5 members hold greater the cooperation and strategic partnership with the Indian side, and despite of that, despite of all those odds, Pakistan, on Pakistan's request, on the behest of Pakistan and on China's request, a session went ahead, a consultative session went ahead. That is what Pakistan was claiming victory on. In fact, Pakistani Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, while addressing a press conference just a while ago, a 30-minute long press conference, he continuously baited for victory, saying the fact that a meeting had been convened, despite the Indians' claim of saying that Article 370 is a totally internal matter. Despite of that, a meeting had been convened. That is what Pakistan had been claiming on. In fact, something that is very interesting is the fact that Pakistan, since the past 48 hours, had been lobbying very actively to garner support of the United Nations Security Council members. The Pakistani Foreign Minister in the past 24 hours has made at least 6 calls just today in the past 24 hours, and that too particularly to the United Nations Security Council's non-permanent member representatives, countries or foreign ministers of those countries. So it was an attempt to garner support, it was an attempt to usher support, but clearly that looks like it has failed, because what we can confirm that the United Nations Security Council in its consultation meeting, it has left the matter for the time being, because Pakistan was not able to convince and the Chinese side itself was not able to convince the other 14 members, and secondly with France and Russia also not supporting. They were of the view that it is a bilateral dispute that should be solved bilaterally and not with UN's intervention. Yes, UN Security Council resolution should be kept in mind, but its intervention, it's not that necessary under the view, and that is the reason. So Pakistan would again want to go forward. In time to come, they would want to lobby more, and as what I understood from Shah Mahmood Qureshi's press conference, he was a bit let down because there was no clear answer on his part when journalists did hurl him questions that what is the way forward. He said that we will quote unquote continue to highlight the Indian atrocities, quote unquote. This is what Shah Mahmood had been saying, and would want to try and garner support and gather more and more support, because remember, this agenda item has now been left open. It has not been put aside, it has not been brushed aside. So in time to come, it can be taken up again by the United Nations Security Council in form of consultations once again. Yes, Palki.
Right, let's in fact play out for our viewers what Shah Mahmood Qureshi, the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, has just said.
और आज ये मसला इंटरनेशनलाइज हो गया है। अगर हिंदुस्तान की क़यादत तिफ़ल तसल्लियां देना चाहती है अपनी आवाम का मुंह बंद करने के लिए, तो 100 दे। ये मसला अब अंदरूनी नहीं रहा, ये दुनिया की नज़र में आ गया है। कश्मीर सेंटर स्टेज है।
That is the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, saying that they have successfully managed to internationalize the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. What does it change? We are still trying to figure out how Pakistan is trying to spin it as a win. The fact remains that Pakistan lobbied with China, took the matter to the United Nations Security Council. Remember, Pakistan asked for an emergency session. That did not happen. The Americans did not come to Pakistan's aid. Poland said that this is an internal matter. The Europeans did not support Pakistan. Russia said this is an internal matter. Even Islamic nations did not support Pakistan. So the Pakistani foreign minister was dispatched to China to get some sort of support. China remained non-committal for 2 full weeks, did not say a word on POK. Then China took the matter to the United Nations Security Council, only managed to get a closed-door consultation, which means very little, because what happens inside is not released in the form of a statement. There is no proper briefing unless some of the members decide to, and we saw that the representatives from China and Pakistan came out and said that the international community is concerned. The Indian representative was left with no choice but to come and clarify on this. Let's quickly play out for you what the Chinese representative at the United Nations had to say after this meeting and how he tried to portray it as global condemnation for India at the UNSC. It was anything but this is what the Chinese said.
China holds the view that the issue of Jammu and Kashmir is an issue left from history between India and Pakistan. According to relevant Security Council resolutions, the status of Kashmir is undecided and is internationally recognized dispute. The Kashmir issue should be resolved properly through peaceful means in accordance with the UN Charter, the relevant Security Council resolutions, and bilateral agreements. This represents the international community's consensus.
Anas Malik continues to be with us. Anas, we've spoken to experts and we've heard the statements from these various representatives. And to my mind, this does not appear to be a victory for Pakistan. But if this is how the Pakistani government wants to portray it, I want to understand from you, how is it that Islamabad intends to take this forward? It went to the UNSC and it ended there. Nothing has changed. No statement that condemns India. No statement that says that this matter should be escalated at the United Nations Security Council. So what are Pakistan's options? Have they exhausted all?
Well, Palki, since the United Nations Security Council has not brushed this aside and has not thrown it in the dustbin, it has consulted and come up to the conclusion, because remember, any way forward would have been devised after an absolute conclusion of that would have been through the consensus of all the 15 members would have been there. China, what we understand that France and Russia had abstained, and they were of the opinion that it was a bilateral dispute, and that the United Nations Security Council should be abstaining at least for the time being. The resolution should be in view of the United Nations Security Council resolutions, but it should be done bilaterally under the Shimla Agreement and the Lahore Declaration as well. So now the Pakistani Foreign Minister, or the Pakistani side, as what we understand from the press conference, that they would continue to bulge on this same point. As the Pakistani Foreign Minister said, that they would continue to quote-unquote highlight the Indian atrocities, since the issue has been left open-ended and it has not been closed-ended. It is left open-ended. So Pakistan has another option. It has another attempt to go to the United Nations Security Council through China as again. This would be after garnishing or gathering support from particularly Russia and France. If they are convinced, only then Pakistan would move. Pakistan would would continue to beat the push about it. Pakistan would continue to say that that there is some quote unquote alleged human rights violation in Indian administered Kashmir. But Pakistan, as I said, what I understand from the Pakistani Foreign Minister's press conference is that Pakistan would not bow down. Pakistan would continue all of its efforts to, contrary to how it has been. The same would continue even now. Yes, Palki.
Right, Anas Malik, thanks very much. You see, language is a very malleable tool. So to say that this is still open-ended, it has not been relinquished to the dustbin, means it's a victory for Pakistan. It all boils down to semantics. How do you portray it? The fact remains that nothing has changed on the ground, and what Pakistan could not achieve at the high tables, it is trying to achieve on the high streets of London. We showed you earlier this evening the kind of protest that Pakistan has doctored, those secret agents of Pakistan who came in the guise of protesters and targeted Indians, and that is the truth. Pakistan trying to make mischief and all those machinations not really helping their case. While they continue to run from pillar to post, while they continue to target Indians in foreign lands, the issue at hand, the core issue, which is Kashmir, is India's focus, and Kashmir is marching towards normalcy.